Hello, and welcome back to the Connect to You podcast, where we talk about health, life, and feelings to connect to a better you.
Hey, so today we're going to talk a little bit about reinventing yourself. Just a few things like, is it okay to do it? Why you should maybe reinvent yourself, or at least think about it? Do you change everything about yourself? Some of those sort of things. So let's jump into it. Mark, when have you gone through a little bit of a personal reinvention?
Lots.
Lots.
It seems like...
Just weekly.
Yeah, it almost feels like that sometimes. I feel like I have recently went through one. So you and I talked recently about this whenever the golf trip was. So what is that, a couple of weeks ago now?
Yeah.
And I had wanted to change not everything about myself, but just certain pieces and almost level up, I think is what I told you before.
Right, yeah.
And there was just certain pieces that I felt that I could be more comfortable doing and just presenting myself differently. And I have gone through that before. So past relationships, anytime that I go through a breakup, I almost try to figure out what happened in a relationship, what could I do better in future relationship, and just what I've learned about it. Are there pieces that I need to change for myself, or was it maybe just not compatible at that point with something else going on? But I find relationships, breakups, that kind of stuff is a lot of the times when I almost feel I need to, I guess, reinvent myself. And sometimes I talk to my therapist about it, and same kind of situation where went through a few breakups before. And he's like, okay, maybe there's pieces that you can take from the past that are good. And then there's also pieces, it seems like, that you can take from those relationships that weren't so good about me and how I can mold that into myself now while still holding on to certain values and beliefs.
Right, so fixing that whole it's not me, it's you part of the relationship.
Yeah, and I always think about it as Mark 1.0, Mark 2.0, kind of like a Windows or an Apple thing.
Gotcha, so we're on like 17.3 right now, or?
Yeah, probably, except in this situation, I'm actually making drastic changes, not just changing like headphone jacks and things like that.
Gotcha, okay, full hardware change?
Yeah, trying to at least.
Awesome. So you kind of covered the why, or a little bit of why. I definitely think it's something that's okay, and not just okay, but probably something that is encouraged to reflect on who you are and see if you can make yourself better, I guess, for lack of any prettier words. Like, just, can you improve yourself?
Yeah, and I think it's how often you do it too, because I think day to day you can look at the previous day, and I think you always want to get better that next day, whether that's in situations of work or personal life or, I don't know, just you yourself mentally being better that next day. Whatever it is, I think you can do it day to day, those small things, and then bigger changes require bigger situations to happen in order for you to maybe feel you need to do that at some point.
Gotcha. So how do you know that you're making positive changes? Are there any good indicators for you? Is it just a gut feeling? How do you know you're on the right path?
I try to look at the people around me to see if the changes that I made actually are positively influencing their lives as well. So if I'm making a change and I'm feeling good about it, if other people are noticing a change that I made and they bring it up, or they're like, oh, are you happier today? Or did something happen recently? Or even if they talk about your appearance, nothing's changed about your appearance maybe, but they're like, wow, you are taller, or maybe you've lost a little weight, or whatever the case is. That people around you see something positive happening, so then you usually know that you're going in the right direction at that point, I find.
Okay, so just getting feedback from those who are close to you and important to you.
Yeah, exactly. And what about you? Do you think it's okay to reinvent yourself over time?
Yeah, I think so. My caveat to that would be as long as you're doing it for the right reasons. I've known people that tend to be into whatever their significant other is, and they completely change who they are so that they can maybe fit in a little bit better with their new significant other's friend group or their lifestyle or whatever. I don't know that that's ever the healthiest way to make a change, but I think if you're doing it for the right reasons, you know, those reasons of self-improvement, better mental state, improving the people you're spending your time with, those sort of things. I think that, yeah, it's definitely positive and encouraged. I think that you can maybe make careful change as opposed to a real drastic kind of like whirlwind tear your life apart change. But sometimes you need those too. So it depends a little bit on the situation, but I think if you're making the change for the right reasons, it's definitely important.
I like the fact that you brought up making it for the right reasons. And I think it's important to know how to judge whether you're doing it for the right reason. And I think you hit on it saying you shouldn't necessarily make that change to suit somebody else.
Right.
You should want to suit yourself.
Yes.
And make your situation better and make situation for other people better. You can take that a bit too far, as you brought up, where you're making these changes and you're doing a total 180, which a lot of times will end up that you're making a 360 once that relationship or whatever ends. And then you go back and you're like, holy crap, I shouldn't have done this.
Yeah.
But if you're making that change for yourself because you think it's going to make you better, and your friends, maybe you talk to them about it or they bring up those positive things. Oh, you seem happier and you seem this and you seem that. And oh, you're glowing type thing. I think you can base that off the people you know personally in your life who are very close to you, rather than basing it on your significant other or whoever you're in that relationship with, basing it off of their friends and that person specifically, because your friends have known you for so long, more than likely, longer than they have. And if you're making that change to be in that relationship, then is it actually worth it at that point? Because if that person can't be okay with you for who you are and you making those day-to-day changes, but instead you need to make that total 180, maybe it's just not right.
Yeah, so I kind of go by the mindset of if you're going to change, it should be to become, you know, a better person or a better friend or a better family member. And yeah, like you said, not changing for anyone else, but changing for yourself. And yeah, sometimes it is a big lifestyle adjusting change. Sometimes you start spending time with someone who you really look up to. Maybe they're a mentor, maybe you're in a relationship with them, and you want to emulate their lifestyle. And there's nothing wrong with that. If it's a better lifestyle than the one you're currently living, and you would overall have a net improvement by gravitating more towards something like that, then yeah, I think definitely go for it.
Yeah, and happiness.
Right, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Gravitating towards what actually genuinely makes you happy is never a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about not everyone's going to be okay with you making a change, which is kind of always how it goes. And we touched on that a little bit in our Adding Value Through Relationships podcast, and how there's those friends that are never really happy for you making changes in your life and those sort of things. Friends is maybe a loose term for them. There's those people in your life. So now when you're making a change and trying to reinvent yourself, there are going to be those people that, you know, might find it weird or saying you've changed or you're acting different. How do you deal with that?
I think it's more about you yourself dealing with it, so personally dealing with it inside, because you're always going to think somebody's going to judge you, or your friends are going to think you're weird, or they're going to question everything about these changes that you're making. If they're your true friends, I can't see that being as bad as what your mind's thinking is. And a lot of the times I feel, because I've ran into this a lot actually, is the reason that you're thinking that is because change is so hard to do anyways. And if you are wanting to make positive changes and you maybe have listed things out, or whether that's in your head or on paper or whatever, or in your phone, if you've listed those things out and you're trying to make those changes, but then you get with your regular group of friends, then I feel that a lot of times that's just your own mental block coming into that, thinking, oh, my friend Ty is going to think I'm super weird because I'm trying to become better for myself and for everybody around me by making these changes. He's going to notice because he knows me super well and knows my personality and everything. And these are the changes that I'm trying to make. So I feel that that mental block would be there, even though for you, you might bring it up and be like, wow, this is different.
Yeah.
But instead, I feel like you would be the type of person that would say, wow, you just seem happier and you just seem more livelier. And you might say those types of things, which is good because that means that those changes were positive. But I can't see you being, wow, you're just super bizarre and a weirdo and you just need to leave right now.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And you know, I have an older friend of mine that he found out his fiance was pregnant on New Year's this year. And so his New Year's resolution was that he's not drinking for the whole year, kind of like a solidarity thing with her. And This is a friend of mine that we used to have some adventures together. Like, things got out of hand from time to time. We were roommates and lived together for a while in college days, and it's a real crazy thought for me to think about him going a full year and not drinking. But I'm also like really excited for him. I think it's an overall like really positive change. Maybe it'll be a bit of a struggle for him, but I think that overall it'll be a great year-long sort of experience for him. And so yeah, it's maybe makes our relationship a little bit different in terms of what we do together and that sort of thing. We had his bachelor party this year, and that was much different than I expected his bachelor party to be from who I've always known him to be, because there was not a lot of drinking going on. But, you know, we had lots of fun. It was still a really good time with my friends. And I think that when you have real friends, that's the result you'll end up finding, is that they don't really care what sort of small to them choices you're making or changes you're making in your life, as long as everyone is overall happier and just kind of in a better place. But I think the thing I'd like to talk about too is when you're trying to reinvent yourself and make these changes, avoiding the gravity of old ways around old friends. Because I think we've all been in that situation where it's really easy to kind of slide back into maybe exactly who you were when you were in high school, when you're with a certain group of friends that you've had for a long time and that sort of thing. And maybe it's in your actions, maybe it's in your mannerisms, maybe it's in your mindset. So what are some good ways to kind of work on that or avoid that? Or do you just lean into it, know it's going to be that way for the day, and then carry on with your life the next day? What do you think?
I don't think you should lean into the old way of things, especially if you're wanting to make a change, because the best time to make that change and really bring it out into the world is around the people that you're going to be spending a lot of time with, right? So if it's old friends, you're spending the majority of your time with those people. So if you're doing that, it's going to be very exhausting for you to switch from person to person, because this is how I see that, is you have the old way of doing things that you lean into. Then when you're not with those people, you have the new way, new you. So Thai 2.0 or 20.5 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're leaning into that person the rest of the time. And I don't even think this is a conscious switch. It's just you have to work at peppering that in. And you can do it slowly if you want with your old friends. But you said it good in the beginning, avoiding the gravity of old ways around old friends. There is gravity there because, going back to what I was saying, you don't want people to think that you're weird or acting different or whatever the case is, and you don't want to get made fun of or judged or anything like that. So adding small things in, and even if you don't, let's say you're like, okay, whatever, I'm going to be this person that I am now, no matter where I am, and that's what you lean into, then yeah, just go for it. And I find I run into this situation a lot where I'll go into old habits, which are old habits, but not my oldest habits. So things that got switched over time based off of like relationships and Instagram, Facebook, like everything that you absorb during the day. But I find that I need to do this better, where I ran into a situation that I thought about yesterday and brought it up to you today in regards to playing badminton. So I was playing badminton and I'm in a league right now for it. And the way I played with my current partner was different than me just messing around at the end, playing with somebody else on my team, and she was playing with somebody else on her team. And I actually was playing better. Like, I felt just looser and made some pretty crazy shots and was smiling the whole time, was very loud and just pretty outgoing, which is a change that I'm trying to make anyways, is just be more extroverted and saying what's on my mind and not really caring as much, as long as I'm not hurting anybody.
Okay.
But I found that I could do that mainly because I'm so focused on badminton and playing that game, where if I'm in a situation where I'm around old friends, so let's say our group of friends, I probably wouldn't be able to do exactly what I was looking to do at that point, unless I talk to people about it beforehand and let them know, hey, this is kind of changes that I'm looking to do, and I don't want to fall back on old ways. So I think that's maybe something to do to avoid the gravity of it.
Gotcha.
Is just to be open and honest with those people about what you're looking to do, Because if they're your old friends and they're good friends of yours, they don't care. They just want you to be happy, whatever that looks like. And people make changes all the time. Like you talked about it, right?
Yeah.
Where your friend is not drinking alcohol. And that doesn't mean that totally different person.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It just means certain situations are going to be different because there's going to be pop, there's going to be water, there's just going to be that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But you could still be the same friends in there, and he's the same guy that he always has been. So, yeah, I just think your friend did it the right way where it's, hey, I'm going to make this change because this is what's happening, and I want to be better or whatever the reason is, right?
Yeah.
And go through the same situation as much as I can. So that's what's going to happen. And having a bachelor party without alcohol is not unheard of.
Yeah, no, it was fine. We had lots of fun.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, too. The fact that he let me know ahead of time definitely made it way less weird. Because, you know, sure enough, I would have like put my foot in my mouth over something, or would have just been wondering like what was going on. Like, oh man, is he on some like heavy medication? Like, is there some reason he can't be drinking or whatever? So it definitely helps me kind of go through that situation with him, knowing that it's a conscious choice he's making. It's a definite choice he's making. And kind of back to that, the gravity of old ways and everything like that. I think that people respect conviction too. So telling your friends the changes you are making and then sticking to those changes, not backsliding because you're with them and then going back to your real life on Monday, but living that life that you want to live. I think people respect that decision to be the way you say you want to be. And when people respect a decision you're making, it's a lot easier for them to kind of accept it and just move on with things, right? So it tends to get passed over a little bit more smoothly instead of it being something that's on the front of everyone's mind all the time. It's just like, oh, that's how Marcus is now. That's fine. Let's move on with our lives, whatever.
Yeah. And the core of that person isn't changing. These are the things that are changing. And seems happier at that point, is perfectly fine with the decision that they're making. It has no real impact on my life other than maybe they're talking more, a little louder, or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Not something that's super drastically changing, just a bit. And figured it out or was told ahead of time, just like in your situation. You go in there with that mindset and know that, oh, we're not going to be taking shots every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Instead, whatever the event is, we're just going to be doing that event. And it's going to get rowdy because that's just the way bachelor parties work.
Yeah.
And maybe not in the same degree, but at the end of the day, everybody still had a great time.
Yeah, exactly. So when talking about reinventing yourself, do you change everything about yourself, or can you keep some of the pieces of who you are, who you were? What do you think about that? If you're going to do a reinvention, should you just strip everything down right to the chassis and completely change every single part?
I think it depends on the situation. I have never done that before, and who knows, maybe I should have at some point. I don't know, but I'm not going to think about that because it's just going to stress me out.
My name's James now.
Yeah.
Every aspect of me has changed. Also, I'm going to only start speaking German.
So I don't think you need to change every single piece about who you are to become somebody completely different. And as I said, it's situational based and it all depends on that reason of that change. So if you want to make a change because you're happier and let's say it's you want to make more friends. So in order to do that, maybe you have to be a bit more outgoing and put yourself into situations that previously you thought were awkward and that you weren't good in. If you want to meet more people and make more friends because maybe you're in a new place, you have to make some changes at that point. Right. And it doesn't have to be super drastic, but you can definitely keep pieces about yourself from the past because there's going to be great pieces about whoever you were before. There's just maybe some additions that you have to add in. And those are the pieces that you need to work on. And the pieces from the past that you keep, maybe you can utilize or increase for the things that you're wanting to work on.
Right. And I don't know that anyone is so flawed or irredeemable that they need to just change every single aspect of themselves. And I think there's a lot to be said for incremental change. I know that when I became a dad, that was kind of a large part of it. It wasn't any big giant changes overnight or a completely different person one day. It was small incremental changes, kind of like a mindset shift day to day, where I'm making decisions that are not just for myself, but a little more for my family and those type of things, where something different is at the front of my mind. And so that maybe doesn't completely alter every decision I'm making, but it colors every decision I'm making. And it's a thought that's present there throughout my day to day.
Well, and something that we talked about before was, especially in regards to a mindset shift, is that decision-wise and perspective-wise and questions that you asked and your future, a lot of the times it seems like you think about a future where your daughter is going to be better off in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where if for me, I don't have a kid, and my mindset at this point is I want a better future for kids that I will have at some point because I'm at that age. But let's say when I was 20, I just wanted a better future for myself personally that wasn't going to be ruined by whatever it could be, even though it didn't really directly affect me. But now, the older that I get, at some point I want to have a family and have kids and a wife, and I want a better world for them, even if it starts right now before that's happening. And we've talked about that before, that your mindset is, okay, when I make decisions or when I think about things for the future, I try to put myself in where your daughter is going to be in 5 years, 10 years, whatever the case is.
Yeah. And so a big one for that, I say a big one, but a good example of a change I've made that I've consciously made because I want a better overall world for my daughter is like a day-to-day language change. In modern English slang, there's a lot of language that's pejorative against women. And I grew up in a rural area. It's not the most cultured of phrasing and that sort of thing. It's really specifically anti-women and anti-gay in a lot of the language I used in high school. And that's just something that, like, that's how I grew up. I never thought about it twice. And that's just the language I used. And now that I'm being a little more careful about, or just thinking more about those sorts of things, I tend to be a little more careful in what I say. And the times I notice that I have to be the most conscious about what I'm saying is when I'm around old friends. And they maybe haven't made those shifts. And it's really easy to fall back into being like, oh yeah, that's super gay, as a pejorative sort of phrase. And I really try and avoid that in my day-to-day, but that's when it's the toughest, is around people that haven't made that shift. But I think that's a great example of a pretty minor change that likely no one has noticed, but it's important, I think, to stop kind of presenting those stereotypes and keeping them going, and yet at the same time, not something that is ostracizing me from my friend group by making that shift. So that's a good one that, it's a mindset shift where it's a small incremental change that is helping me become a better person.
Yeah, and words are so powerful that we say.
Whew, yeah.
And no matter who you're saying those words to, it's going to have an impact on them, right? And whether that's outwardly you notice that impact that it has, or if it has an inward impact. And I feel a lot of times people can have that mindset shift. I don't think it takes much to do that at all. It's just think about that other person and let's show compassion, let's care.
Which I think is another thing too. We talked about, like, why make this change? Like, why reinvent yourself? And a few kind of things I have pointed out. New ideas come along, which are always a good reason to change. Different opinions, whether someone else is presenting you with a new opinion or your opinion has shifted, or just culturally there's some new opinions out, or maybe there's an existing issue that you've changed your mind on. So I know, as far as like mindset shift, we all have parents and they're all from a different generation than us, pretty much definitionally. Otherwise that doesn't work. So our parents are all from a different generation than us, a generation that in a lot of ways thought very differently about a lot of things. And I won't get into any of the politics of it, but we all likely grew up having a lot of the same opinions as our parents. And after a while, you start maybe reevaluating those, or you get new information, or you get in a relationship where someone has a different opinion than than what you grew up on. And I think it's really important that when you reevaluate those, if you need to change your mind, change your mind. Because not operating on any new information or any of your own research is not a great way to go about things. So maybe you finally look into something, you find that what you've thought all along is a little bit wrong and you need to change your mind. That's a great reason to kind of give yourself a little, self-reinvention.
And I'm happy you brought that up because I also grew up in a small town and same kind of stuff happened. And for me, I don't actually talk to a lot of my old friends anyways. And the friends that I do have in my life, that's just not where we're at. I haven't said anything like that. I don't even remember the last time I said that because it was probably when I was in junior high.
Yeah.
Maybe. And you grow out of it. And as you said, like your new ideas and you have different opinions. And if you get made fun of, and this stretches to anybody, if you get made fun of and you don't feel it's right to get made fun of, I don't feel you have the right to make fun of anybody else or to say anything to anybody else like that. You should be kinder at that point, not lash out more.
Right.
So yeah, definitely changing your mind. And that could be, as you said, relationships that you're in, people that you meet, even your parents making changes and you noticing that kind of stuff, and social media being a big thing, right? Because everybody's on social media.
And they all have opinions.
Yes, everybody does. And just making sure that your core values. So I've spoken about the top two values for me, and that's connecting and family. So family's number one, connecting's number two. And I can't connect with people if I don't change certain opinions that I have and certain mindsets that I have, and always trying to be better than I was the day before. And those two values they're not going to hurt anybody because family's my number one, and I would drop everything for family. And I have certain friends who I consider to be family, and I would drop everything to help those people. And connecting is, as I said, I want to make more friends and I want to do things and I always want to be better, and I can't do that stuff if I'm stuck in my old way.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, keep trying to make those incremental changes, and don't feel if you make those changes that it's gonna be the worst thing to ever happen to you, or that somebody's gonna make fun of you or anything like that. More than likely, that's just your mind saying, hey, if we make this change, this is going to happen, because change feels like it can hurt sometimes.
Yeah.
And especially if you feel that somebody's going to judge you, because those are your group of friends and I guess your tribe, and you don't want to not be around those people and do something that might make that happen. So be okay making those changes.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And I mean, change is tough. It's generally our mind and our body wants to remain in a state of stasis, right? Like we don't want to change. We don't want anything to disrupt. So it takes some work.
Sometimes hard work. You have people around you who are going to support you and have that mindset in your head that whatever change that you're thinking of making or want to make, as long as it's going to make you happy and it's going to better the people around you, just better their lives when you're with them, then nobody's going to have an issue with that. And even if you tell them about it, they're not going to laugh at you. If they laugh at you, maybe listen to our value and relationships episode and reevaluate that. Have that conversation with that person saying, hey, you laughed at me about this. I wasn't okay with it because I'm being serious, and have some conviction behind what you're saying and stand behind it and say why you want to make those changes, why it'll make you happier, and how it'll affect them. And maybe it won't have any effect, or maybe it will, and at least be honest with that person about it. And if they still laugh at you, you have your answer.
Yeah, that's a really good point. They've pretty much told you all you need to hear. All right, so just to kind of recap, is it okay to reinvent yourself? Absolutely. Definitely go out there and upgrade yourself to you 2.0 or 5.7 or whatever new version you need to get up to. And you'll know that you're doing it right if that change is something that makes you happier, makes the people around you happier, makes you feel better about who you are. And you might see some resistance, but chances are there's not going to be as much as you think, and people won't notice as much as you maybe think they will. It's good to kind of get out of your head on those and be careful of slipping back into old habits with old friends and in old situations, and just know that anything worth doing is worth working for, and you need to, have some conviction on those choices that you're making and those changes that you're making. It's okay to embrace new ideas and different opinions and change your mind from time to time or as you grow and evolve and mature, and look into making that daily mindset shift and those incremental changes to get you where you want to be.
Yeah, and something that I find works, at least for me, and I used to do this, I stopped doing it. Now that I have this idea, love the podcast for this, I'm going to start doing it again, is writing down the changes that I want to make and the reasons behind why I want to do that. I find that when you write stuff down, it's out of your head, it's on paper, it's real, you can feel it. And if you post it up somewhere on your bathroom mirror, somewhere where you're going to be right in the morning or a few times during the day, wherever that spot is, as long as you see it multiple times during that day, you can look at it and be like, yes, okay, I see it. These are the changes I want to make. These are the reasons. And say it out loud. Say out loud to yourself. When you first do this, it's going to be weird. Trust me. And you'll probably crack your voice a bit going through it because you're just talking to yourself. But really say out loud to yourself in the mirror, because then at least you're talking to somebody visually.
Sure.
But say it out loud of what change you're wanting to make, why you're wanting to make it. So I'm wanting to make this change because I will be better, I will be happier. This is what will happen in my life. And for my friends, this is what's going to happen for them because I'm making this change, or for my family or my significant other or my kids. Whatever the case is, say that stuff out loud multiple times during the day, and somewhere inside you unconsciously, that'll just pick up as a habit. And the more you say it, the more conviction you can put behind it. And then you'll start to notice that that action just starts happening everywhere that you are.
Awesome. Couldn't agree more. Write it down, say it out loud, believe it, live it.
And tell somebody. And I feel like we bring this up every time where we say, write this down.
Yeah.
Is to actually have that conversation with somebody else, and somebody who you are going to be spending time with, and somebody that you trust and 100% that not going to laugh at you. And even if they do, I don't think they're laughing at you. They're probably just giggling at the fact that I'm happy you're making this change because I feel that it is going to be a great change and I can probably take something from this. And that's more of why they're laughing, because they're thinking about it for themselves, being like, oh, this is a great idea. I can actually do this myself too.
And also, if you talk to them about it beforehand, it's a lot less weird when they hear you talking to yourself in the mirror.
If that person's around, so maybe.
But yeah, definitely get yourself an accountability buddy. They're super handy for when it comes to keeping you on track and making sure that you're staying true to yourself and doing what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. So with that recap, we're at the end of the episode for the Connect to You podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.